Do you ever wonder what is intended for or likely to be understood by only a small number? The traditional beliefs, customs, and stories of a community. A community not part of the mainstream, unconventional, peripheral, or extreme. Part of an anthology, a published collection of poems or other pieces of writing. This is Esoteric Lore. I'm your host, Edward Aponte, where I push you to ponder the fringes of folklore. Most podcasts today focused on interviews. Interviewing famous people, people in authority. And I thought, while my podcast doesn't really focus on interviewing others, more on data, research, and discoveries, I thought, why not use that popular model for podcast? But instead of interviewing a famous person, how about if I interview myself? But not just my ordinary self, but I interview myself, my 30 years ago self, myself found in boot camp, in the Marine Corps boot camp. 30 years ago, I was in boot camp. So I was going through some of the my yearbook pictures from boot camp and subsequent training, and I found a few of my platoon mates, and each of them wrote in the back notes to me, and I want to read those notes and use them as pretty much the questionnaire. And really the key question is, am I still that person from 30 years ago, based on who I was to them 30 years ago in boot camp? The goal also of this podcast is also to get you to see, go back through your yearbooks, what people wrote about you, your friends, classmates. Who are you today? Are you better? Are you the same? Have you improved on that person 30 years ago? So let's begin with one of my first platoon mates. Let's see what he says. Edward, it's over, but our friendship will last. I'm glad I stayed in this platoon because you helped me focus back on Christ. And you've become a brother to me. And both will last after the Corps. God bless. Signed, my platoon mate. Next, my second platoon mate. He used to refer to me as G-Money, so here it is. G-Money, you are someone who enjoys the simple things and always makes the best out of every situation. Your smile can always make me laugh. Thank you for being here in boot camp, because without you and Lacombe, I probably would have went crazy. God bless. Signed, my platoon mate. Third and final platoon buddy, Gaston. That's my middle name. Well, buddy, we did it. Can't say I was the funnest thing in the world, but I guess it isn't supposed to be. Well, I hope I'll see you at MCT. That's Marine Combat Training. Just stay spiritually strong, and you will always do good. We're moving on. See ya. Signed, my platoon mate. As I listen to and read these quotes from my platoon mates, I'm a bit emotional. That's why the long pause between statements. But if I were to take an assessment, self-audit myself emotionally, spiritually, I'm still that person. I'm still the same person with a few more bumps and bruises, life experiences, but at the core, I'm the same. How about you? Is the 30-year-old ago you the same as the present you? Spiritually, emotionally, physically, we're definitely probably not the same after 30 years. But what about emotionally? At the core, life happens and we get emotionally bruised, battered, broken, but we believe. How are you emotionally? Are you better off emotionally than 30 years ago? More refined? And why? Go back and read. Go back through your yearbooks, high school or college, and see if you can glean anything that's lasted for decades. Characteristics, traits, some of the intangibles that make you you, that over the decades just don't go away. And you might find also that as you read and look back at decades old memories, you might see yourself completely different. Maybe improve, maybe drop some things, some habits, some idiosyncrasies that are just different. Most people will call that maturity. Each person's maturity is different. The timing, what they consider to be immature, differs from person to person. But the only way you can really attest to that is by looking back, reading what others said, wrote about you in high school and college. How different are you? And the big question is also, are they around in your life? For me personally, these three guys and most of my Marine Corps buddies, I haven't heard a word in, frankly, decades. But that's also life. People move on, live in different states, have lives. And yes, those kind of relationships take effort. But this is not a podcast on maintaining these deep friendships. This podcast is about who you were decades ago and how close you are to that same person. The improvements, the refinement. And only by looking back, okay, sometimes you could appreciate the present and the future. How about you? Take a few minutes, go into your attic, basement, closet, and see. Go through those pictures, go through those yearbooks. Take a seat and frankly read and meditate on what's on those printed page of that yearbook or that class picture. Who are you today based on who you were then? Pause to appreciate the amount of life that has happened. 1 decade, 2 decades. For me personally, this is 3 decades ago. That's a lifetime. That's deaths, divorce, children, ups and downs. That also makes you who you are in the present. Take time to really remember in the truest sense of the word. Remember who you were and who people saw you to be. What are the qualities that have lasted? What are some qualities that you said, wow, yeah, I don't do that anymore? Or wow, I'm literally the same in that particular quality, attitude. How do you present yourself? Can you see things that are still part of who you were decades ago? That make you genuinely you? And if you were to describe yourself in one word, what would it be? One word. I'm pausing to thank myself out loud. What is that one word? As I turn these pictures over again to see what they wrote. Maybe look for a common denominator, just something that's one thing. I would have to summarize if I were at this right moment, putting the pressure on me. I would have to say happy. And happy is a good word, but personally, if I were to translate that, the word would be contentment. Because happiness is frankly about happenstance, circumstances, but circumstances like bootcamp are not really happy places, but you can still find contentment. So if I were to summarize one indelible quality of myself, it would be contentment. How about you? What intangible quality rises to the top, supersedes all of them, has been part of you for decades? You were to run a straight line from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. What is that one constant silver lining that makes you, you. How would that look like? What is it? In one word. For me, contentment. Well, let's get to the interview. Edward, are you the same person? Well, at the core, I am. I have a lot more life experiences, but at the core, I can see. That's why probably I get emotional, because I can see that I'm still at the core this individual, this Christ follower, happy person who enjoys the simple things of life, to quote my platoon buddies. I'm still that person. Okay, question number 2. Who are you today in reference to 30 years ago? I'm still that person. I would have to say I'm more refined. My worldview is refined. At the core, it's the same. Contrary to popular belief, my worldview is still literally the same, just refined. More streamlined, and a sense of greater appreciation for me, those smaller things in life. I'm a minimalist, the simple things in life. Contentment, things that are what makes us who we are, human beings. Final question. Edward, where do you go from here? Good question. I would say I want to add and improve on the core of who I am. Master myself. Become a better me. Well, I hope by listening to this simple podcast on almost scrapbook memories, yearbook memories, in my case, boot camp, class picture, platoon picture memories. Hope by going back into your memory books, you might read and reflect on who you are decades later, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. See you next time. If you like this video, please subscribe, share, and give us a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. See you next time.